In all cases, when you look at the heart, there will be two cuts on the front surface. The one, when we're looking at it, it will be on our left as we're looking at the heart this way. Obviously, the heart's fitting in the guy like this. It's on the right side of the animal, right? It's their right, but when we look at it, it's our left. And you always label things according to the orientation of the object being viewed, not from the viewer's perspective. So this in fact is the right side of the heart, and this is the left side of the heart. What I've done in all cases is taken the pulmonary artery, which is this one. If you look at the heart and you look at the leftmost cut, what I've done is taken the pulmonary artery here, and I have cut down through the pulmonary artery, which means I have cut then into the right ventricle. And from the right ventricle out would be the pulmonary artery. So that first cut, that you look at it from this view and it's on your left, but it would be really the sheep's right. That is a cut through the pulmonary artery into the right ventricle. That's what that is. So this means this is the pulmonary artery, this little stubby part here. That's all that's left after they took this heart out of the sheep. That's what they've got as a remainder. At the junction of the pulmonary artery and the ventricle, you should end up with being able to see just find one little flap or pocket of the pulmonary semilunar valve, which is that thing. Remember I said there were three pockets that went around between the pulmonary artery and the ventricle, the pulmonary semilunar valves? Well, that's one pocket of the three that would make up the pulmonary semilunar. That means this is the right ventricle. That's what that chamber is. This line right here is the divider between the right ventricle and the left ventricle, coming this way. So that first cut goes through the pulmonary artery and cuts the front of the right ventricle open. The second cut over on the other side goes through the left atrium down into the left ventricle, which is this part here. So this big thick walled thing is the left ventricle, right? That means that this flap here is a part of the bicuspid atrioventricular valve. It means that these small cords at the end of the valve are chordae tendineae. Those are those things. You end up with those cords, those little stringy things. Those are chordae tendineae. If you take the chordae tendineae from the valve down to where it runs into the heart muscle, that means that part there, that ridge that you see poking out this way, that's a papillary muscle. At the end of the chordae tendineae will be a papillary muscle. At the other end of the chordae tendineae will be the flap of the valve. And since we're on this side, this has to be the bicuspid valve, because we've gone through the left atrium, down into and cut open the front wall of the left ventricle, and that's the thick muscle helping to form the ventricle itself. If you hold the thing up this way and look at it front to back, that's the aorta, or it's probably branches that have come off the aorta. In other words, when they took the heart out, they might have cut the heart out a little bit above where, see where I got my arrow on the red diagram? If they cut it out there, then you would have ended up starting to have branches coming off the aorta, and that's why we've got these two things here. If you put these things together, you'll find that these things join up with each other. So these things are branches that have come off the aorta, but for our purposes, we're going to call these parts of the aorta.
So this lower part's the aorta there? This lower part right here?
This? No.
Like right here?
Yeah.
That would be the aorta?
Yeah. Anywhere in there, we're going to call the aorta. So that would be the pulmonary artery. This is going to be the aorta. And back here, when we've got an opening, this is the opening of the superior vena cava. Back here.
Is there an inferior?
Yeah, it would be there. You see, what depends upon where they cut the heart out. If they cut the heart out way up here, we'd end up with a long superior and a long inferior vena cava. If they cut the heart really close, then we end up with stubs or holes almost, where they should have been or where they are. So if you go from here down into here, then you'll go into the right atrium. If you go through the right atrium, you're down into the right ventricle again. Right? Okay. You've gone through the atrium, now you're into the ventricle. Right atrium I don't care about particularly. It would be this chamber here. But that would be the superior vena cava there.
Okay.
And then you go through the atrium, and that's the right ventricle, and that's the right. Tricuspid valve on this side I don't care about. You can see the valve design and you can see the chordae tendineae better on the big side, on the left ventricle side.
Sorry, what was this one again? This left here?
That would be a bicuspid valve,
Oh, yeah, okay.
because you're on the left side, and that would be the chordae tendineae of the bicuspid valve.
Okay.
And where they end up entering into the muscular wall of the ventricle would be a papillary muscle. Okay?
Show inferior vena cava.
Inferior vena cava, you can get it to if you look at the.
So that
There.
part, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I see.
Okay.
Okay.